Hey, and I'm doing this video. I wasn't really sure if I was going to do it or not, and I've been kind of going back and forth on it, but I realized I have a lot of old videos that contain this particular subject in them. And what I'm talking about is the bump that was on my head. Now, first off, I'd like to thank everyone. Nobody has, as of yet, even mentioned it, which is why I was kind of wondering if I should even make this video. But at the same time, I figured, you know what, maybe I should make it in case, you know, somebody in the future has a question about it, or if anybody, you know, is just being polite and they are wondering what's going on there, and yeah, you know, just ease people's minds, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, before this video, because my videos are all out of order, I've got stuff from many 4, 5, maybe even 6 years ago, maybe even longer than that, still being posted. And then I've got stuff that's current, so sometimes you'll see a small bump, a big bump, a no bump, you know, whatever. But as you can see, there's no bump there anymore. And basically, I'll give you the history of how the bump came about. Now, I have had a small bump on my head ever since I was small. Very, very young, as a child. Now, you couldn't really see it because I had hair. Now, obviously, as my hair went away, the bump became more noticeable, but it was still small and nobody really questioned it. The bump, I believe, came about, I think you may, I don't know if you can you see it on my, okay, not really, but there is a small little scar there. Sometimes it's more noticeable than others. I hit when I was, I don't know how old I was, but I did it more than once. I hit my head on, you know, jumping on the bed, right? You know, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. Well, I was a monkey, I jumped on the bed. And I jumped on the bed at a friend of the family's house. They had a very, very springy bed. And boom, right into the headboard. Split my head open, had to go to the hospital and get stitches. I think it happened twice, if memory is correct. And I believe that there was a small little bone piece, small, I mean really, really small, and it kind of just sort of, you know, made its way and eventually turned into this little bump. At least that's what I always figured it was. I mean, nobody ever confirmed what it was or anything like that. I was just, you know, guessing as a kid growing up all the way through, because I mean, you could press on it and move it and stuff like that, and it was there, and it never got bigger, it never really got smaller. But in our basement, there is a sort of like a crawl space underneath the stairs area, and we store stuff in there. And beside that is a smaller or a larger opening into our furnace area. So you have to bend down to get through both of those areas. And I happened to whack my head off of the 2x4 at the top, and as a result, and I ended up hitting right on that particular bump that I've always had, right? And as a result, it got bigger, and eventually it kind of went down. I think it was just, you know, like liquid swelling around it, and it went down. It didn't go quite to the size that it was, you know, prior to the event, but it was, you know, because it got relatively big, and then it went down. And I didn't think, you know, I thought, okay, whatever, it's just eventually it's going to go back to the way it was and all's good. And even at whatever size it was, you know, only slightly more noticeable than it was before. Nothing, subsequent. What am I thinking? Substantial. That's the word I was looking for. And yeah. And this is one of those areas where we keep all our Christmas stuff and all our holiday stuff, right? So in the holiday times, mainly Halloween and Christmas, mostly Christmas, we're in and out of that area. And then the furnace area has, tools and stuff like that. So I'm in and out of there relatively often. Well, wouldn't you know it, man, I'm having trouble talking today. Wouldn't you know it, before this bump had really gotten back to normal, I whacked my head a second time right on the bump. Now I have bumped my head a few times, and I mean, the crawl space, there's nothing I can do. The space that's for the furnace room, eventually that's going to get changed, but nothing I can do about it right now. But yeah, so the crawl space, there's nothing I can do. You got to bend down to get in there and move around and such. But yeah, so I whack my head again, hitting the bump. And like I said, I've hit it a few times. Normally I don't hit the bump, I hit somewhere else, and it's usually back here. I'm not gonna lie, it's usually back here, and I usually, it bleeds, and that's how I know that I've done a little damage. Sometimes it doesn't do anything, and it's just, a light graze or anything like that. But sometimes, it bleeds. But yeah, this time I managed to hit the bump again, which was weird, because, I mean, yes, I have hit my head a few times. It's just one of those things. You're essentially kneeling down, looking down, trying to go through the hall, and you put your head up too early, or whatever reason. Or maybe you're not paying attention and you turn around and put your head right into it. I don't know. There's multiple things that I've done resulting in me bumping my head in those small openings. But that bump on the bump ended up causing it to grow, and it continued to grow, and to the point it never went down. It wasn't going down. I mean, it went down a little bit, but it was there. It was like, okay. And my mom and my uncle, were pressing me, you got to get that looked at, you got to get that looked at, you got to get that looked at. And I'm generally not the kind of person who goes to the doctor much, because usually when you go there, you come out with bad news or something. Right? Got to do more tests, got to do this, got to buy this, got to do that kind of stuff. It's, even though, being in Canada, we do enjoy, our healthcare being paid for the most part. But this was one of those things where, I didn't know what was covered and what wasn't covered, and I didn't have any money that I could put into something like that. Or I did have money I could put into it, but in my mind I was like, why would I spend money on this? I don't have a problem. I got a bump on my head, whoop-de-doo. What do I care? But my uncle, who deals with, getting skin cancer removed on the regular and such, he was big onto, you got to get that checked. You got to get that checked. My mom, looking at it, is like, you got to get that checked. Eventually saying, you know what, both of them said, we'll pay for it. We don't care if it costs money, go do it. In all likelihood, it won't cost you anything, right? And I was like, oh, well, okay, whatever. Well, so I decided to go to the doctor. And he sends me to a specialist. And from the specialist, I get the, yes, we can do it. We'll take a look at it. But here's the thing. If it turns out that it is, cancerous or is something of a bad nature, it is covered. If it turns out that there's nothing of a malignant nature, nothing that is bad towards you, and it's just a bump that we're removing, then it turns into plastic surgery, and you got to pay for everything. Fantastic. Well, seeing as how other people were going to pay for it, I said, okay, we'll do it. And he went in and he cut it out and, you know, got it biopsied, and it turns out it was nothing. So yeah, it wasn't cheap. Plastic surgery isn't cheap. At least not the kind you got to pay for. Well, it's not cheap in general. The difference is one you got to pay for and the other one the government covers. But yeah, so that's why you'll see me and I don't have a bump. Now I actually have a, I don't know if, I'm going to see if I can find it. I think it's right here. But there's a slight, it kind of goes flat on my head because he had to get it off, you know, out and not remove everything. He sort of shaved down the bone portion there. So he didn't do like, you know, a hack job where he's like, oh yeah, and I got a big divot. I mean, unless he needed to. If, I mean, it had grown into my skull or something like that, then yeah, he probably would have. And maybe even given me a plate or something. I don't know. But, yeah, so now I've got a, instead of a bump, I've got a slightly flat spot on my head. But, yeah, you will continue seeing videos with, you know, little bump, big bump, no bump, all, you know, various iterations of my head. But in case you were wondering what the heck is going on there, well, now you know. It was, I'm guessing it was, you know, I'm going to still go with that little bone fragment from when I was little, surrounded in some kind of fluid, getting agitated, and my body essentially going, oh, we've got to, you know, repair that, and filling it up with some kind of fluid and such. And yeah, eventually it didn't know what to do, and it all got stuck there. And so I had a big bulbous thing of fluid and hard stuff in there. Because there was a hard piece. I mean, most of it I mean, obviously my skin made it so that you couldn't squeeze it completely, but you could press on it like it was almost like a rubber ball type thing. You could press into it and it moved a little bit, you know, enough to know that it was not solid. But yeah, now I don't have that, and I guess I look as normal as I did before, or as I don't know if I ever looked normal. You be the judge. You comment down below. Did you like me better with the bump? Anyways, just thought I'd do this little video and let you know what's going on, because yeah, sometimes people are curious because we're human. Anyways, thanks for watching. Till next video, take care. Have a good one.